He was the kind of man who could buy any car, close any deal, and walk into any room without needing to say a word. Power looked good on Ethan Cross. It always had. But that night, in the middle of a thunderstorm, power couldn't save him. His sleek black Aston Martin sputtered to a stop on a deserted road just outside the city. No signal, no driver, no security, just the sound of rain and a flashing engine light. When a tow truck finally arrived, Ethan expected a tired old mechanic. Instead, the woman who stepped out froze him where he stood, because he'd seen those eyes before. 10 years ago, before he became who he was now. If you believe the past never truly leaves us, if you think some faces are meant to return when we least expect them, then stay till the end of this story. Because what Ethan found that night wasn't just help on the road. It was the one thing his money could never buy back: forgiveness. Like, share, and subscribe to Between Raindrops Stories, where every lost moment finds its way home again. The rain fell in silver sheets, relentless against the windshield. Inside the luxury car, the dashboard glowed faintly, a flickering reminder that even machines can fail. Ethan Cross exhaled sharply, hitting the steering wheel once. Perfect. Of course this happens tonight. It was past 11 p.m., and he was supposed to be at an exclusive investor dinner downtown, the kind of event where presence was currency. But the CEO of Cross Tech was now sitting in the dark, stuck on the side of an empty road that stretched between city glass and country silence. He reached for his phone. No bars. Even the storm seemed to mock him. For a man who controlled empires with a signature, this helplessness was intolerable. He stepped out, pulling his coat tight against the cold. The rain was colder than he expected, a sharp reminder that real life didn't come with tinted glass and chauffeurs. Within minutes, headlights cut through the darkness. A battered tow truck rolled to a stop beside him, its wipers squealing in protest. The driver's door opened with a rusty groan, and that's when he saw her. She jumped down from the truck, tugging off her gloves. Slim build, oil-stained jeans, hair tied in a messy knot, and eyes that burned through the rain. Steady, unafraid, and familiar in a way that made his heart stop. She froze too, her hand tightening around the wrench she carried. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she broke the silence first. "Ethan Cross?" she said, disbelief curling in her tone. "Didn't think billionaires still drove themselves." He blinked. Sorry? Have we met?" A bitter smile touched her lips. "Yeah, once. You just didn't stay long enough to remember." Her name tag caught the light when she turned. Maya Reynolds. And suddenly, he did remember. Not the face, but the voice. 10 years ago, Ethan was a broke college student working part-time at a gas station on the outskirts of town. He'd shared coffee breaks with a girl named Maya, a bright mechanical genius who could fix an engine blindfolded and laugh like she didn't know what heartbreak was. They'd planned to leave that town together once, until one night Ethan had left first. He never called, never came back, and now here she was, wiping grease from her hands and looking at him like the past had finally caught up with him. "I can take a look," she said shortly, crouching beside the car. "You can wait in the truck if you don't want to get wet." He hesitated. "I'd rather stay." Her eyes flicked up. "Suit yourself." The rain poured harder. She leaned under the hood, flashlight beam cutting through the downpour. He watched her hands, precise, confident, steady, just like he remembered. "I didn't know you still lived around here," he said finally. "Didn't know you still knew how to talk to people who do," she shot back. He winced slightly. "Fair." She didn't look up. "You left without saying goodbye, Ethan. You said you'd call. I waited a month. Then I stopped waiting."
The words hit harder than the rain. There was no accusation in her voice, just something heavier. Resignation. "I was young," he said quietly, "and stupid." "You were ambitious," she corrected, "and I wasn't part of the plan." The storm swallowed his silence. 15 minutes later, she closed the hood and straightened. Alternator shot. "You're not going anywhere tonight." He sighed. "Figures." "I can tow you to my shop. We'll look at it in the morning." He nodded, grateful, and a little afraid of how her calm voice still carried the same quiet power it always had. Inside the truck, the air smelled faintly of rain, oil, and peppermint gum. She drove without speaking, headlights slicing through the fog. He watched her from the passenger seat, the curve of her jaw, the grease under her nails, the same spark in her eyes. And for the first time in a decade, Ethan Cross, the man who had everything, realized there was still one chapter he'd never finished. Because sometimes life doesn't give you second chances. It just sends you back to where you left your heart.
The storm followed them all the way to the edge of town, a small cluster of dim lights, shuttered shops, and cracked pavement. Maya's garage sat at the corner of a dead-end street, its flickering sign barely visible through the rain. Reynolds Auto Repair, the kind of place time forgot, except for the one person who refused to leave it behind. She parked the tow truck, killed the engine, and the night went still. Ethan stepped out, shoes splashing in a shallow puddle. "Nice place," he said, half teasing, half sincere. "Don't mock it," she replied, grabbing the tools from the back. "This place fed me when nothing else did." He nodded quietly, guilt catching in his throat. "I didn't mean... I know what you meant. You don't have to explain yourself, not anymore." Inside, the garage smelled of metal, rain, and faint lavender, like someone had tried to make the hard edges of life a little softer. A small heater buzzed in the corner. An old radio hummed a low tune, the kind of music they used to listen to when life was simpler. Maya threw her jacket over a stool and crouched beside his car, popping the hood. The single overhead bulb cast warm light over her face, streaked with oil, sweat, and quiet determination. Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her work. "How long have you had this place?" 8 years. He blinked. 8? She nodded, not looking up. "Took it over from my dad after he passed. It was either this or sell it." His voice softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "How could you?" she said flatly. "You didn't look back." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was heavy, fragile. The kind of silence that only exists between people who once knew each other too well. The rain outside softened to a steady rhythm, like background music to something neither of them knew how to finish. Maya straightened, brushing her hair back with the back of her wrist. "You hungry?" He hesitated. "A little." "Good. There's leftover soup in the back. It's not Michelin star quality, but it's warm." He smiled faintly. "I'll take warm over fancy tonight." She raised an eyebrow. "Wow, the great Ethan Cross settling for soup from a plastic bowl. Never thought I'd see the day." "Neither did I," he said quietly. They sat at a small metal table near the back of the shop, 2 bowls of tomato soup steaming between them. The radio hummed something soft, an old love song that made time feel slower. Maya took a bite first. "Still can't believe you're sitting here. Last I heard, you were flying private jets to Singapore." He smirked, then sighed. "Yeah, that's the funny part. I got more money than I can spend, but I can't remember the last time I actually felt at home anywhere." She stirred her soup. "You used to say home was wherever you parked your dreams." He smiled sadly. "And you used to tell me dreams can't drive without gas." She laughed, a small, genuine sound that cracked something open in him. It was the same laugh that used to make the night shifts feel like they meant something. He studied her quietly, then asked, "You still fix cars yourself?" "Every day. People think I run the place. Truth is, the work's the only part that makes any sense." "Anyone helping you?" Maya paused, then nodded toward a small framed picture on the wall. A teenage boy, maybe 15, smiling beside a half-built motorcycle. "My nephew. Or, well, my son now, actually. I adopted him after my sister passed." He looked at the photo, something tightening in his chest. "He looks a lot like you." "He's smarter than I ever was," she said proudly. "He helps with the engines when he's not in school, wants to study mechanical engineering." "That's incredible." "Yeah, he'll build something better than this one day. Something that moves people instead of just fixing what's broken." The words hung between them, simple but heavy. After a long pause, Maya spoke again, softer this time. "You know, when you left, I didn't hate you. I wanted to, but I couldn't." He looked down, fingers tracing the edge of his bowl. "You should have. I tried. Didn't work. You were part of the dream, the one I had to bury to make room for real life." He swallowed hard. "I never stopped thinking about you, Maya." "Don't," she whispered. "You make it harder than it needs to be." "I mean it. I thought I was doing the right thing. I had a scholarship offer, New York, one shot. I told myself if I look back, I'd lose everything." She met his eyes. "And did you?" He exhaled slowly. "Maybe not everything. Just the one thing that mattered." She looked away, pretending to busy herself with the empty bowls. "You can't say things like that, Ethan. Not after 10 years. "Why not?" "Because people like me don't get to rewrite endings," she said quietly. "We just learn to live with the ones we got." He stood, pacing slowly toward the car. "What if I told you I never stopped wondering what would have happened if I stayed?" "Then I'd tell you it don't matter anymore, because the version of me who waited for you, she doesn't exist now." He turned, meeting her eyes. "Maybe she does. She's just tired." The air between them crackled. Not romantic yet, but real, electric, with the kind of emotion time can't kill. The lights flickered once. The storm outside had slowed, but thunder still rumbled somewhere far away. She sighed. "The alternator won't be ready till tomorrow. You can sleep in the office if you want." He nodded. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, he asked softly, "Why did you really help me tonight?" She hesitated at the door, one hand on the light switch. "Because once," she said, "you helped me believe I could do more than survive." And with that, the lights went out. Ethan lay awake on the small office couch, staring at the ceiling. The storm outside had faded to a whisper, but his mind was loud. 10 years ago, he left her to chase success. Tonight, he found her in the ashes of everything he lost along the way. And for the first time in years, he realized maybe fate doesn't punish. Maybe it just waits.
The storm had passed. By dawn, the garage was bathed in a soft, golden glow, sunlight filtering through high windows, glinting off toolboxes and puddles left behind by the night's rain. Ethan woke to the faint clatter of metal and a humming sound from the other side of the shop. For a brief, disoriented moment, he forgot where he was. The smell of oil and coffee slowly brought him back. He rubbed his eyes, sitting up on the narrow couch, and then he saw him. A boy, maybe 15, with short dark hair and grease-streaked hands, bent over the hood of a dusty red pickup. The resemblance to Maya was uncanny. "Morning," he said quietly. The boy looked up, startled but not nervous. "You're the guy from last night," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yeah, I guess that's me. She told me you broke down on the highway. I fixed the alternator while you were sleeping." "You did that yourself?" "Mostly," the boy said with a shrug. "Mom helped me finish it." "Mom," Ethan repeated, the words settling heavy in his chest. "You're her son?" The boy nodded proudly. Tyler Reynolds." Ethan smiled faintly. "You're good, Tyler. Better than I was at your age." Tyler grinned, clearly used to compliments, but still humble enough to blush. "Mom says I have to finish school before I fix the world." Ethan chuckled softly. Sounds like something she'd say. Maya walked in just then, coffee cup in hand, her hair still damp from a quick shower. She froze for a half-second when she saw them talking, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Tyler, did you remember to—" she began, but the boy interrupted her. "Yeah, Mom, the alternator's done. He can go now." Ethan noticed the way her gaze softened at that. Pride mixed with exhaustion, the kind of love that had kept her alive all these years. Over breakfast, coffee and day-old pastries from a paper bag, the three of them talked like people who'd known each other in another lifetime. Ethan asked questions about the shop, Tyler's school, the town. Maya answered carefully, keeping emotion out of her tone, but every now and then her eyes gave her away. Whenever Ethan smiled at Tyler, she looked away. Whenever Tyler asked about Ethan's company in the city, her voice grew quieter. Finally, the boy left for school, backpack slung over his shoulder and helmet in hand. "Nice car, but if you ever need something reliable, get an old Chevy. They don't quit when it rains." "I'll keep that in mind." When the door closed behind him, silence filled the garage again. Maya leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "You didn't have to stay." "Ethan, I wanted to." "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Ethan." "I'm not trying to." He hesitated. "He's a good kid, Maya. You've done an incredible job." Her expression softened just slightly. "He's my reason for everything. When my sister died, I promised I'd give him a life she'd be proud of." "And his father?" Her gaze flickered, then steadied. "He left before Tyler was born. No explanations, no goodbye. Guess that makes me consistent with my taste in men." He winced. "I deserve that." She sighed, looking down at her hands. "You deserve to grow. I just wish you hadn't had to disappear to do it." For a long moment neither spoke. Then Ethan walked closer, stopping just short of her. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed?" Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Every day for a while. But then I realized I wouldn't be here. Tyler wouldn't have me. This place wouldn't exist. Maybe it's better this way." He nodded slowly, the truth of her words cutting deep. "Maybe, but I still wish I'd seen this version of you." She gave a small, wistful smile. "And I wish you'd seen this version of yourself before the world made you forget who you were." She turned back to her workbench, picking up a wrench, but her hands trembled slightly. Ethan took a slow breath. "Maya, I didn't just come here because my car broke down." Her head lifted. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "The dinner I was supposed to attend last night wasn't business. It was the 10-year anniversary of Crosstech, my company. Everything I built." "Congratulations," she said, the faintest edge of sarcasm in her voice. "No." He shook his head. "That's just it. When they toasted to me, I realized I didn't even know what I was celebrating anymore. My success didn't feel like success. It felt like distance from everything that used to matter." Her eyes softened. "You think finding me again fixes that?" "No," he said honestly. "But maybe it reminds me what I broke, trying to build it." Maya stared at him, her walls flickering like the old lights above. "Ethan, we can't go back. That boy you left and the girl I was, they don't exist anymore." "I know." He took a small step closer. "But maybe we could start from who we are now." She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "You don't get to walk back into someone's life just because you finally have the time to feel lonely. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and said quietly, "It's me finally realizing what home feels like, and realizing it wasn't a place I lost, it was a person." The words hung there, suspended in the air between them. She looked away, blinking hard. "You should go," she said after a moment. "Your car's ready." He didn't move. "If I leave, I'll just end up back where I started, pretending that nothing is missing. Ethan!" "Let me stay," he said softly. "Just for a while. No promises, no apologies. Just a day." She hesitated. Every rational part of her wanted to say no. But the look in his eyes, the sincerity, the exhaustion, the quiet longing, it undid something she thought she'd buried years ago. "One day," she said finally. He nodded. "One day." As he helped her clean up the shop, sunlight spilled through the open garage door, bright, clean, and golden. For the first time in years, Maya didn't mind the sound of silence. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like a stranger in his own life. Sometimes second chances don't come as grand gestures. Sometimes they arrive disguised as broken cars, and people brave enough to fix them. The next morning unfolded slow and golden, the kind of day that seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself knew something fragile was happening and didn't want to disturb it. Maya was already in the garage when Ethan walked in, sleeves rolled up, coffee in hand. Tyler's bike leaned against the wall, half disassembled, while an old radio hummed faintly from a shelf. "You're up early," Maya said, not looking at him. He smiled. "Couldn't sleep. The couch has character, but not comfort." "That's what happens when you sleep on honesty instead of money," she replied dryly. He laughed softly. "I'll take that as progress." Tyler burst in moments later, hair still wet from a rushed shower, backpack half-zipped. He grinned when he saw Ethan. "You still here?" He shrugged. "Your mom still got my keys." Maya rolled her eyes. "You're getting them back once we test the alternator. Can't have the great Ethan Cross breaking down again. Imagine the scandal." Tyler laughed. "You talk about him like he's famous." Maya smirked. "He kind of is." Ethan scratched his neck, embarrassed. "Not really. I'm just, someone who's good at making people think I know what I'm doing." Tyler tilted his head, studying him. "That's what grown-ups call leadership." He chuckled. "You might be right." After Tyler left for school, the shop grew quiet again. Maya tossed him a set of keys. "Come on, Mr. Cross, let's see if your expensive toy can survive small-town repair work." He caught them easily, grinning. "You still don't trust me behind the wheel?" Trust the car, not the driver. They climbed in, the same sleek Aston Martin that had stranded him less than 24 hours earlier. When the engine purred back to life, the sound filled the garage like a deep breath being released. Maya crossed her arms, satisfied. Guess I still know what I'm doing. He glanced over. You always did. She looked out the window, hiding the faint smile that tugged at her lips. They drove without a destination, letting the road decide, past quiet fields and gas stations that hadn't changed in decades, through stretches of road that looked almost familiar. At first, the drive was filled with small talk, business, local gossip, the weather. But slowly it softened. You ever miss it? Maya asked after a while. The old town. He thought about it. I miss who I was when I still believed leaving was the answer. She nodded slowly. It's funny. Everyone thinks success means escape, but sometimes staying is harder. He smiled faintly. You sound like someone who figured it out. She said, maybe. Or maybe I just stopped running when I ran out of roads. They pulled over by the lake, the same one they used to drive past as teenagers. The rain had left the world glistening, every leaf still dripping silver. He stepped out, inhaling deeply. This place hasn't changed. Maya joined him, her reflection rippling beside his in the water. Some things don't need to. He looked at her. You rebuilt your whole life here, alone. She shrugged. I didn't rebuild, I just kept going. He nodded quietly. You were always better at that. She glanced at him, her voice soft but edged with truth. And you were always better at leaving. He didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. They sat on a bench overlooking the lake, the air heavy with unspoken things. Ethan broke the silence first. I used to think walking away was strength. Now I think maybe it was fear. Maya's gaze stayed on the horizon. We were kids. We didn't know any better. Still, he said, his tone low, I owe you an apology. For the letter I never sent, for the calls I never made. She looked at him finally. You think a few words fix 10 years? No, he admitted, but they might start to heal them. She exhaled, something in her shoulders softening. It's not the leaving I couldn't forgive. It's that you never looked back. He said, I was afraid you'd moved on. She whispered, I did, but not from the way it hurt. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world shrunk down to that single glance, 10 years collapsing into one breath. Then she looked away. You should get going soon. I'm sure someone important is waiting on you. He hesitated. Actually, no one is. Maya frowned. You mean? He said quietly, I called my assistant this morning, told her to cancel everything, indefinitely. Her expression flickered, surprise, then concern. Ethan, you can't just... He interrupted gently. I can. For once, I'm choosing not to run from what matters. The sound of her phone broke the moment, a sharp buzz against the calm air. She checked the screen and froze. Ethan noticed. Everything okay? She hesitated. It's your company. They called the shop landline before, said they've been trying to reach you. He frowned. Why would they? She turned the screen towards him. The message preview read, Urgent, Board Emergency. The press wants a statement. Financial issue at Crosstech. You're the only one who can contain it. For a moment, neither moved. Then Maya said softly, Looks like the world still needs you. He stared at the phone, jaw tightening. I've spent 10 years fixing problems that never meant anything. Maybe this time they can wait. She didn't have to say anything. You always knew what would happen. The drive back to town was quieter. Maya watched the road. Ethan watched her hands resting on her lap, calm, steady, certain in a way he no longer felt. When they reached the garage, she unbelted her seatbelt and turned to him. Go, she said simply. He opened his mouth to argue, but she stopped him with a look. "Ethan, I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. Not again." He hesitated. "If I come back, would you let me stay?" She finally said, "If you come back for the right reasons, not because you're lost, maybe." He nodded. "Then I guess I'll find out which reason it is." As he drove away, the reflection of the garage lights blurred in the rearview mirror. Maya stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching the taillights disappear down the road. She didn't cry this time. She'd learned long ago, when love returns, you don't chase it, you just leave the door unlocked. Sometimes life tests you twice. First when you leave, and again when you're asked to come back. And the real question isn't whether you'll find what you lost, but whether you finally learned how to stay.
The city skyline shimmered beneath the glass walls of Crosstech Tower, bright, beautiful, and hollow. Ethan hadn't been back in weeks. The boardroom still smelled of polish and anxiety, the kind that only money could buy. He'd built this place, every detail, every deal, every perfect facade. And now, it all felt like someone else's life. The financial scandal had been real, not catastrophic, but dangerous enough to rattle investors and send reporters digging into every inch of his company. He'd spent days putting out fires, nights drafting statements that meant nothing, and mornings staring at his reflection in the glass, wondering when success had started feeling like grief. But through it all, one thought stayed constant. The sound of Maya's voice telling him, "Don't rebuild for me. Rebuild for the man who still knows how to care." And now, for the first time in 10 years, he knew exactly what that meant. The next board meeting was supposed to be routine. It wasn't. Ethan walked in without his usual armor. No tie, no rehearsed charm, no PR-filtered words. The board members glanced up in surprise. One of them, a gray-haired man with sharp glasses, started the discussion. "Mr. Cross, we've stabilized the markets, but the press still wants an official statement regarding the company's direction." "Good," he said calmly. "Then here's your statement." He took a deep breath. "I'm resigning." The room erupted. "What? Ethan, that's absurd. Think about the shareholders." He held up a hand, steady and sure. "I have. For 10 years, I've thought about nothing else. And somewhere along the line, I forgot why I started this company in the first place." He looked around the table, faces he'd known for years, none of them capable of remembering the boy who once worked at a gas station and dreamed of building something that mattered. "I built Crosstech to make life simpler for people, to give others what I didn't have, a chance. But lately, all it's done is build walls around me, so I'm tearing them down." He slid an envelope across the table, his resignation letter. And then he smiled softly. "Consider this my first honest business decision in a decade." And with that, Ethan Cross walked out, not as a CEO, not as a headline, but as a man finally free. The drive back to the small town felt different this time. No suit, no pressure, no noise, just the open road and a quiet heart finally learning how to breathe again. When he reached the edge of town, dusk had already begun to settle, that gentle blue hour where the world looks like it's remembering something. Reynolds Auto Repair was still open, the same flickering sign, the same smell of oil and coffee, and, to his relief, the same soft glow through the garage window. He stepped inside quietly. Maya was there, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled, working on an old Chevy. She looked up at the sound of the door. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she wiped her hands on a rag and said, "You came back?" He nodded. "I told you I would. Just took me a little while to figure out why." She studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. "And did you?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah. Turns out I was never looking for success. I was looking for peace. And I think I left it here."
She leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, trying to keep her composure. "You always had a way with words, Ethan." "No," he said quietly. "I had a way of excuses. Words are only worth something when you live 'em." Maya looked away, blinking fast. "So what now? You're just done with that world?" I stepped down. Cross-tech belongs to people who can run it better than I ever did. I'm starting something new. A foundation. Scholarships, training programs for small-town engineers, mechanics, innovators. People like us who just needed a chance. She softened. "You're serious?" "Completely," he smiled. "And I might need someone to teach me how to actually hold a wrench." She laughed, really laughed this time, the sound echoing through the garage like light breaking through old clouds. "You? With grease on your hands?" "Hey," he said, holding up his palms, "I'm a fast learner. Besides, I know the best teacher in town." The moment stretched between them, quiet but alive. Then she asked softly, "And if you get tired of small-town life again?" He met her gaze. "I'll fix it before it breaks this time." She smiled, the kind of smile that said she didn't entirely trust him, but wanted to. "Grab a wrench. If you're going to stay, you might as well start earning your keep." Ethan grinned. "Yes, ma'am." Hours later, the garage was dark, except for a single lamp and the glow of the rain outside. They worked side by side in silence, two lives slowly stitching back together in the rhythm of small movements, shared space, and soft laughter. When the car finally started, Maya wiped her hands and said, "Looks like you didn't break it." Ethan smiled. "Not this time." She turned to leave, but he stopped her gently. "Maya." She faced him, waiting. He took a slow breath. "This isn't about apologies anymore. It's about choosing right now. Choosing you, this, us. Not because I need saving, but because I finally understand what love looks like when it's real." Her eyes shimmered. A single tear escaped before she could hide it. "Then, I guess it's my turn to take a chance," she whispered. He stepped closer, close enough for the quiet between them to disappear. And in that soft, oil-scented light, they kissed, not with urgency, but with the kind of peace only found after a storm. The next morning, sunlight poured through the garage windows. Tyler's laughter echoed from outside as Ethan handed him a wrench. "Think you can teach me?" Ethan asked. Tyler grinned. "Only if you promise not to touch the spark plugs this time." Maya leaned against the doorway, watching them, two halves of her past and future finally standing in the same frame. Narrator, soft, emotional tone. Sometimes, life doesn't give us new beginnings. It gives us a second look at the same road and a chance to take it slower, together. Because love isn't about fixing what's broken, it's about building something that lasts. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Between Raindrops Stories. Tell us in the comments, would you give someone from your past a second chance if they finally came back, not with promises, but with peace? Until next time, remember, even broken roads can lead you home.